President Joe Biden traveled to northern Illinois this week to celebrate the deal that ended the United Auto Workers strike. The agreement will reopen a Stellantis plant in Belvidere that closed earlier this year. President Biden said he stood by the UAW as they demanded higher wages. He said the deal the union reached will set a new standard. The president also praised the American workforce.
I know what we can do, and folks are given half a chance. That's why I'm so optimistic about our future. We just remember who we are. We are the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity if we work together. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And you're making it happen.
Biden's visit coincided with a ratification vote by the local United Auto Workers on the Stellantis deal. 81% of production workers and 88% of skilled trades members voted in favor of the deal, likely due in large part to a provision that would reopen that plant in a few years. Joining me now is Michael Childers. He's a professor in the UW-Madison School for Workers. Thanks so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure.
So let's start with this. Hundreds of thousands of workers have gone on strike this year nationally. Here in Wisconsin, we had TruStage in Madison, Leinenkugels in Chippewa Falls. What has fueled this rise in worker unrest?
It's interesting because if it's looked in a historical context, actually these kind of industrial actions, workers resorting to kind of their ultimate weapon, withholding their labor, is actually still at a pretty historical low. I think there's been a somewhat of a surge, at least perception-wise, since COVID, when I think a lot of workers were told they're essential and have decided, you know what, I think we'll take people up on that we are essential and that we are critical to the success of our enterprises.
And has there also, coming out of COVID, have there been any other revelations for workers beyond that they have also felt a little bit more of those frustrations?
I think there's a couple of things at play, right? We are in a historically tight labor market as well, which benefits all workers, whether unionized or not. So in terms of being able to, basically vote with their feet and find jobs where they can be better compensated or have more respect at work, I think unions and the workers that have organized them are determined to try to basically recoup some of what's been lost due to the inflation that's occurred since COVID and want to just kind of maintain their current standard of living.
Many labor movements this year are seeing victories. A couple examples here. Hollywood actors strike just ended. The United Auto Workers Union secured a big raise for its members with the Big Three. And then UPS Teamsters, they approved that contract earlier this year to avert a strike. How do these wins contribute to the momentum of the broader labor movement?
Oh, I think they definitely, you said it, they do contribute in the sense that workers can see, hey, they were able to achieve this. Why wouldn't we be able to also have a success? And I mean, you can even go back further a little bit to like the John Deere strike back in the winter before these, like you said, major 2023 potential job actions. And yeah, these unions and the workers that are a part of them were able to pretty much prevail on all of their major demands in terms of bargaining.
What difficulties in the system almost prevent or make it harder to translate a desire for representation into an actual representation here?
Sure, I think there's been many attempts at labor law reform here in the United States, and you have to understand that we're living in a time where almost a whole generation of people have not really known like major strikes to be occurring. There hasn't been, by the way the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics measures strikes, they call it a major work stoppage, and it means at least 1,000 workers for over one shift. And those numbers have not been triple digits in a year. In other words, there haven't been over 100 of those since the early 80s. So we're literally living in a time now where people are saying, strike, what's this strike you speak of? And workers more and more have seen, hey, this can be an effective tool to allow us to advocate for our interests. The system, I think the Starbucks workers are the prime example where they had the congressional hearings, et cetera, where labor law exists, but companies are willing to flaunt it because there really is no punitive aspect to making it enforceable.
Policies like Act 10 and Right to Work here in Wisconsin have made it harder to unionize in the state, but federal and state lawmakers have really been trying to capitalize on this worker frustration here. They're pushing agendas that are centered around workers' rights. How have we seen this kind of attention in the political sphere translate into voter sentiment or just highlight the movement as a whole?
I guess I would say that, workers are always interested in getting more equity for their efforts, right? Everybody wants more pay, and they want a voice at work. And as election time rolls around, politicians are keen to capitalize on that. They realize that if this is top of mind for voters, then this is an issue that they should probably be speaking of. I guess I would just say, even it's interesting, even north of here in Canada, for example, where in some instances, in a few provinces, it's actually illegal for workers to be replaced when they're on strike. Just yesterday, they proposed for the entire country, if it's under any worker under federal regulation, could not be replaced during a strike, which in effect makes striking a much more even dynamic and effective tool for them to try and basically achieve their bargaining demands.
Is it beneficial for a politician, for their party, for their win, to focus more on workers' rights? Is this something that when they put that effort into it and they make that forefront of their campaigns, is that something that speaks well to the voters?
I think we're going to find out, right? I know that, the current president, Joe Biden, said that he was going to be the most pro-labor president that you've ever seen. Now, maybe the railway workers might have some quibble with that, but in general, I think that, yes, I think to the extent that politicians are able to speak to interests that the voters have, that it can absolutely benefit them at the polls, and we're about to find out, I think.
Michael Childers, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.